I'll tell you why. I don't know why this is, but I almost weirdly am romantic about going back to zero. Now, people don't believe me, and I respect that because it sounds ludicrous. But when I tell you the Rocky where he lost it all and went back to the neighborhood, I'll never forget watching that movie. Like every part of my chemicals, not even my brain, it was like, right? Was like, yeah, like I'm gonna fucking lose it all. They're all gonna shit on me. And then I'm gonna rise like a phoenix. Every time there's athletes that crash that I don't like, I didn't have any feelings towards Tiger. He crashes, now I'm like, let's go. Like I'm underdog guy. I associate with underdog, I love underdog. And even when I'm winning, I almost subconsciously sabotage myself to not get to the next place because I enjoy being underestimated. I'll give you an insight. You asked me something interesting. You're like, who are these people that say that you're just a whatever? No, I want everybody to rewind and see how I had to hesitate a little bit because I'm not even sure if I'm manifesting the haters, Gianni. Exactly. because like that's what gets me in that place. Now, of course, there's people that don't think I'm gonna buy the Jets or I'm overrated. When you've got everybody that's got, even anybody that knows everybody has that level of back talk, but I love that, Rich. I'll tell you why I've never been scared. First of all, I'm an immigrant. What that means is, back to the way I define it, because there's a million ways to define it. It always means that I have enough cash stashed away somewhere that if everything goes to zero, I can still put a roof over my head and the kids will be okay. So I have this like secret stash that's forever. So that's one thing. I know that I'm never betting the whole farm. Number two, if I lose it all, I don't have any needs to have the fucking, you know this, I've talked a lot about this if you guys have done your homework. I'm not the guy that's about needing things to show my W's. I'm not about the private jet life. I'm not about the, I've even struggled being a sneakerhead because I'm like I talk about not flexing, but these are $900 a pair. I struggle with a little bit. Even the sports card thing, when it got hot, I wanted to kind of flex some of my collection, but I'm like, do I post this $48,000 rookie card? That's me being a hypocrite to the people. Like, I don't need that validation. So if I lose it all, I love the game more than the success the game gives me. Let's talk about that for a minute. If I lose, it means I deserved it. I made a series of bad decisions that led me to losing it all. I deserve to go back to renting an apartment instead of owning some shit, because guess what? I lost. That's one of the things I hate about old rich people, is they try to use their money to change laws so they can keep their money. And I say to them, and I have a lot of 80-year-old rich friends, I say, motherfucker, when you were the young lion, you were killing the old lion. But you're the old lion now. So either be a great old lion, because they come around once in a while, or be fucking eaten, but don't try to change the rules of the jungles, bitch. I think it's really disingenuous to not talk about the fact that a lot of people are selling things that they cannot believe. There was a human being on stage yesterday who said, we believe that people watch television so that they can watch our commercials.
Capture his face.
Remy, not 1992, not 1982, not 1972, not 1962, not 1952. There was never a time, ever, that people decided, I'm gonna watch Leave It to Beaver just so I can catch the Coca-Cola commercial. There was probably, and I've done a lot of homework on this, there was a time where the commercial was a slight enjoyment part. You were curious. It did have a different culture. The remote control had been invented. There was a lot more creative firepower in the ad world in the 50s and 60s, not because of anything, but because people actually saw the commercials, thus inspired highly creative people to want to make them. And so, yes, I do think that, there's people selling media here that is not transparent media. For all the wonderfulness that is outside, one thing that is not outside in any shape or form ever at Cannes is common sense. There is no version of common sense, otherwise nothing that is being said would be said. And I think that the industry is within itself. I don't think we can go and interview the 8 billion people on earth and ask them to recall 4 commercials that that they could today. There is no network television consumption going on. It's all gone to streaming. And yes, I really struggle with that. I think it's incredibly challenging for me to wrap my head around the concept of selling something that in my soul I don't believe in, and I think that happens a lot in our industry.
Well, and I think, when we think about also, and I talked about this the other day, omnimedia, which is multimedia, but we don't live in a linear world. We live in an omnipresence world where consumers own what they watch, when they watch it, and how they want to watch it, which is, consuming all forms of media in real time at the same time, in a whole different fashion.
That is all about the content we actually want to watch.
Correct.
None of that is the things that people make to interrupt those people and try to sell them.
Correct.
When people say, Gary, you're wrong about TV, people watch sports. I'm like, people watch sports? That's very different than people watching the commercials during a sporting event. And meanwhile, I think this, this is a very global talk, but the Super Bowl ad in America is the best ad in the world. You get 60 to 100 million people actually consuming it and wanting to consume it. People are always like, well, there's big events like the Oscars and the Olympics and the Super Bowl. I'm like, no. Those are big events, but the variable difference between the Super Bowl commercial and the Oscar commercial, there's not one conversation about the Oscar commercial by normal people. The ad world wants to make it happen. It'll get covered. And so, yeah, I really struggle with these variables. Being always you is extremely hard. A lot of people, let's talk about this business. I've been in it for 13 years. 13 years later, what's amazing about truth is it finds its way. Sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's a century, but truth is a funny game. It finds its way. And when you're obsessed with the notion of not compromising who you are and being comfortable within your own skin, it comes with an extraordinary amount of judgment. I am wildly, for the people that know me best, wildly soft skill oriented, deeply based on kindness and empathy and compassion. However, as a communicator in most settings, a podcast, on stage, I'm incredibly over the top, highly aggressive, sports, wrestling, it's who I am. I'm incredibly comfortable in my high energy, in my tenacity, in my ambition, in my deep competitiveness. It's who I am. The problem is when you're that guy, and this is 13 years ago, definitely today, when you're that guy, there's an incredible amount of judgment when one doesn't know any more about you. This industry, the wine business, whether it follows me everywhere, and it takes a lot to, especially when you're proud of how you treat people and who you are, to get just a headline reading, one clip, one curse word out of your mouth. He's this. When hustle porn got thrown at me, that was devastating. One person wrote one Medium article with 50 falsities in it, but people just ran with it because, unfortunately, the world has pain, which I'm incredibly empathetic to. There's not a single time I'm faced with hate that I'm not compassionate to why it's happening. Not one time. I understand why it's happening. It still doesn't taste good when you're on the receiving end of it. And we're so quick to judge. We've become incredibly good at pointing fingers, and we're really, really scared to use our thumbs. The accountability has gone completely out of the window. The leaders of the world have no civility towards each other, thus we've now started to do that. And then on top of everything else, I'm a really interesting character. I understand communication so well that if I'm trying to create change, I know that there's certain patterns of the chess move that I have to do to get people to buy in, to then later do the work that I need to do to get there, which is triple challenging because you know you're connecting with certain individuals on one part of your life. You know that you're putting in the work to try to reframe the conversation for them in a different way, but you know that the way you're getting them in is being judged by everybody who's virtue signaling you, judging you, and it's challenging. and I always I like talking about this because I always want to remind people, no, look how, in this room, everyone looks different. And today's age, which I find incredibly appropriate because for the last 8 trillion years, it was the reverse. In today's age, for the microsecond, the judgment towards a white male with no context is extremely high. I find that appropriate. It's a macro counter reaction to centuries of work. However, on an individual basis, one human being, their mother might have been an alcoholic. They might have had a family that had money and lost it all. And this concept that you know anything about, I mean, think for a second right now, all of us, about the people in your direct family that don't know everything about you. I'm talking about your mother and your siblings that don't know actually every single thing. How the fuck do we know anything about each other in this room? And so for me, I'm willing to be judged because I know what I'm doing with the attention, and I'm willing to have scrutiny up front, to have the accolades later. This town 13 years ago, when we were talking about the companies that we were talking about, they shit on them. They now completely control this town, right? And so, being historically correct is incredibly gratifying. It takes incredible strength internally to deal with the short-term judgment.